Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get us officially started. Welcome to the Texas Children in Nature Network webinar, A Tale of Two Urban Trails, promoting physical activity and active transportation on the Texas border. My name is Sarah Coles. I'm the Executive Director of Texas Children in Nature Network, and we're excited to have you with us today. We are recording our session, and thank you so much for joining us. To save bandwidth for all of our attendees and for a clean recording, we ask everyone to have their cameras off and mute themselves during the presentation. I'll be monitoring the chat so you can share your questions there, and I'll share them with our presenters. Please remember to keep your comments in the chat kind. Yasmin Anderson is running tech for us today. Thank you so much, Yasmin. As I said, we're recording the session. Alice will share in a follow-up email the recording link. If you're uncomfortable with your name showing, you can change your name to anonymous and then private message Yasmin with your name for our attendance. Also, if your name, Zoom name, or the name you sent to Yasmin doesn't match the name you registered with, please change your name or let her know, and then we can make sure that we have it on our attendance. If you need a certificate and we do not have your name, we will not be able to provide that certificate. And if you are needing a certificate, you'll need to go ahead and follow the directions that were in the email that you got with today's Zoom link. I'm going to go ahead and do our land acknowledgement. Texas Children in Nature Network is headquartered in Austin, and as such, I'm on the ancestral and unceded lands of the Tonkawa, Comanche, and Sauna people. Our ongoing colonial presence on Indigenous lands compels us to take action now to counteract the effects of colonization. The work we do through the Texas Children in Nature Network is one small step towards that effort. In just a moment, I'm going to put some links about those people groups in the chat. And now I'd like to go ahead and welcome our presenters today, Ava Garcia and Jana Renner. We are so excited to have you with us today. And I'm going to go ahead and throw it over to y'all.
Great, thank you. I know Jenna was one of the key reasons why we're here working on the border. We want to give you a tale of two urban trails promoting physical activity and active transportation on the Texas-Mexico border. And really, I'm here for Commissioner Dr. Rose Gowen. I didn't want to change her face and her name. She asked me to stand in for her. She was originally scheduled to lead this presentation, but I've been working closely with her for 12 years, and I feel that I personally stand on her shoulders. And so I'll let Jenna go ahead and introduce herself, as well as your other presenter.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jana Renner. I'm a Senior Program Officer at the Paso del Norte Health Foundation, and I manage our physical activity initiative. And the primary project right now we have under that initiative is the Paso del Norte Trail that I'll be talking about later. Turn it back over to Ava so she can continue.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so I don't think I introduced myself there in the presenter's piece. My name is Eva Garcia. And again, I'm from the Brownsville area, and Commissioner Dr. Rose Gowen had been our champion in health and promoting bicycle and pedestrian time outdoors here in the Rio Grande Valley for more than a decade, closer to 15, 16 years. But the city of Brownsville started trail momentum along the Texas-Mexico border, again, about 20, 15 years ago when this really started. I work with a regional metropolitan planning organization, but my story, just to give a brief intro, is I was born and raised in a colonia, and we couldn't afford more than one vehicle between my mother, my brother, and my sister. And so my dad at some point had gotten me like a $300 bike. And I started biking as my main form of transportation because again, I couldn't afford a vehicle. I didn't have access um to jobs nearby or an ability to like save while I was going to school. So when I was in college and I needed an internship, I had to be able to bike there. And at the time, career services is like, well, I couldn't go intern at the island. I couldn't go live in another city. I couldn't afford to. And so I ended up interning for the city of Brownsville, and Commissioner Rose Gowen had just taken office, maybe like a couple years before that. And in my internship, they said, you bike every day, where would you build a trail? And I swear that changed my life. That one question of bringing out a map as a young adult, and they said, where would you build a trail? Knowing that we had these demands. So to give you a little bit about our demographics, we have about 185,000 in population, close to 200,000 if you consider the international travel that we see on a daily basis, people coming to or from Mexico. The Matamoros population across our the Rio Grande is at 1.2 million. So it really does serve a lot of people, but our poverty rate is really high. We had a 26% of our community is living in poverty. The median household income is 46,000 a year. And but the average age is about 30 years old. And so since again this past, we've completed about 41 miles of trails within the cities. I'm sorry, bike lanes and off-street infrastructure to help us connect our community. And so we have our main international bridge here. And like I said, I grew up in a colonia outside of Brownsville, way out here off the map. And so our needs for an urban and suburban rural area kind of come into play. But like I said, we're part of the Rio Grande Valley, and so the Rio Grande Valley is made up of four counties, and we have El Paso's way over here. So like they said, from different sides of Texas, but here on the south side of Texas, we have the five counties with the highest poverty rates. And so lower poverty rates can be found in more metro areas, like the Denton area, the Austin area, around here. But some other factors outside of more than 40% of our families living on $20,000 a year for a family of four. This is a little bit old data. This is about 10 years old, but I don't think it's changed so much. We still have about one in three people with diabetes, whether they're no, diagnosed or undiagnosed, but it's 20% higher than the rest of Texas, 23% higher than the national average, with 80% of our population being either obese or overweight. We have more health challenges here, and you can often tie them when you think about public health to the social determinants of health, right? And so we have high rates of morbidity and mortality, higher rates of cardiovascular disease, cancer, liver, kidney, and infectious diseases. Over 60% of our adult population is uninsured, and we lack a lot of the infrastructure that we need, like public hospitals and other schools. One of the biggest statistic to me that I think changed my viewpoint of where I grew up, when I started interning, was that I found out that the Rio Grande Valley has the highest rate of amputations due to diabetes. And I think that was significant to me because we're literally losing limbs on a disease that is preventative. And so this is where I think children in nature really play a big role, and all of you engaging with children in nature and trying to build the momentum to get kids outdoors, because I really think it's a preventative health tool, right? It's really about do we want our youth facing these type of statistics that we're seeing because there hadn't been programming and care to ensure that our population was being physically active or have what they needed to be outdoors in spaces that are better for our mental health. And while this data has kind of been around for a while, I put in this from another Teams meeting that I had been in a couple of weeks ago, and I copy pasted it and included it here because what it says is, working directly in healthcare, I've observed a significant no-show rate among patients residing in rural areas. A major contributing factor is the ongoing transportation challenge, which continues to hinder access to care. Without these reliable transportation, these patients face increasing barriers to receiving timely medical attention, and ongoing issues result in further decline in their health. So again, transportation may not be the way that you think about kids being outdoors, right? We think about recreation, we think about campouts, we think about hikes, maybe sports programs. But transportation is also that. And when we are constantly in and out of a vehicle and are not advocating or demanding safe spaces to walk and to bike to and from places, then we are choosing the sedentary lifestyle as the easier choice. And by making walking or biking the easier choice, then you're able to change a daily physical habit, a lifestyle. And this contributes to the other community benefits of trails. So one study found that 43% of people reporting a place to walk were significantly more likely to meet current recommendations for regular physical activities than those where there were no place to walk, right? And for quality of life, studies performed by the Centers of Disease Control by the CDC and prevention found that increased access to places to be active can boost the number of people getting enough exercise at least 3 days a week by 25%. So that's really the significant piece to, I think, looking at walking and biking trails as something more than just a luxury, right? It's not just a luxury, it should be critical infrastructure for quality of life. And so, because we've been so motor centric, especially in Texas, with our oil industry, I think that we've separated ourselves from places where we can play, and you're not seeing the neighbors get together and jump in the resaca over here in the Rio Grande Valley Delta. You're not seeing your neighbors go out and play on the streets, whether it's basketball or going to meet up. And so programming of spaces has become the more of the demand to get children outdoors, to get adults outdoors, to get people outdoors. We have to program these spaces to remind them what you can do here, right? And to remind them what's possible in these public spaces. And so here is a picture. We did a Guinness World Record for the largest Zumba class ever and that was a fun way to bring the community, bring people in and get them exercising. But we also offer this is what we call like a bike rodeo, and they go through a little bicycle course. We offer kayaking. You have to provide the kayaks because, again, a community living in poverty does not have the access to purchase or rent oftentimes these type of equipment. So even here with the kids, we rented out these bikes to these kids and did a Bikes for Tykes bike ride. And so attending these events or volunteering at these events, asking for these events from your community is a way that I think we can help get children back in nature. But to applaud the city of Brownsville under Commissioner Gowan's leadership, we have been building a lot of infrastructure. So the historic Battlefield Trail is the spine of our network at 9 miles. It's nationally recognized as a recreational trail because it connects three historical battlefield sites. And if you know the Mexican-American War and you're familiar, you ever come down to this area, I encourage you to go to our national park nearby and learn the history of Texas. But we have the West Rail Trail, Paseo de la Resaca Trails, Montebella Trails, Belden Trail, and all these trails here, the Sports Park Hike and Bike Trail, a State Park Trail, and then Laguna Atascosa is a national wildlife refuge. And so we're able to have all this infrastructure, and that's great and dandy, but we need the marketing and the promotion, right? I'm very good at technical expertise in terms of how to build trails and how to fund trails. But the promotional piece, the conventioners and visitors Brownsville, putting the information out there, getting the beautiful pictures, getting them out there to encourage that outdoor activity. That is another area that I think if you're here to learn about what you can do in your area, the photos, the small videos, the marketing, the promotion, the website, the QR codes, all of that is now regular and needed to kind of get people the information that they need. But the city of Brownsville's momentum really built momentum in our entire county. And about 10 years ago in 2015, 11 cities came together to build a vision for a network to connect our communities. Each city approved a memorandum of understanding with the Rails to Trails Conservancy, and we established a Trail Nation project. And they were very interested as a national organization because of the equity pieces here, right? We're predominantly minorities and high rates of poverty and high rates of health disparities. So from this effort, from this partnerships, we developed the Lower Rio Grande Valley Active Transportation and Active Tourism Plan, what we called the Active Plan. And I'll tell a little bit more about the story, but it came to be known as the Caracara Trails Network. Um, so this is what that plan looked like when we developed it in 2015. It still, for the most part, looks like that. We've had some route changes and some new alignments. But what you can see here is that through this visioning strategy, the plan identified over 100 miles of on-street trail, which is this blue loop, over 200 miles of off-street trails, which are the red lines. A lot of this is using drainage infrastructure, like canals and irrigation ditches. And then we also have about 78 miles of paddling trails because we know that people in nature, people, we call it active transportation, but it's a tourism piece too. People love being on the water, and we're lucky enough to have that accessible in our backyard. So how do we make that available to everybody and not just maybe wealthy people who can afford the weekends and the vacations there? So this vision came to light to generate these new economic opportunities throughout our county, diversify the local tourism market, link our communities together, create a regional bicycle and pedestrian network, and promote healthy lifestyles. And so that's again what occurred in 2015. In 2016, our cities and our MPOs at the time we were separated, we're now merged, have all adopted it. And then we really started seeing the expansion of certain trails through this Fort Brown connection. Another city in Harlingen had an extension funded by a health foundation similar to Paso del Norte Health Foundation. We had our own here. And again, these health foundations are really interested in seeing this incentivized sort of health initiatives or preventative health care. But the connections continue to grow. And now where we're at, we're still doing groundbreakings and connections because we have a really ambitious plan. But it's kind of shifted its focus from, and a lot of us, the governments, the MPO, we're still focused on infrastructure building, but the Caracara Trails as a brand and as a regional trail network is now focused on information sharing with the public. Right now that we've built some infrastructure, how do we let moms and dads and people know where these events are, where the infrastructure is, and how to get there, where to park, and give you all that needs. So we focused a lot last year on website updates. Our homepage now has more updates to focus the information, make it more user friendly for our customer versus the partners. So we talked a lot about building that partnership, but the partnership is very technical. The partnership is very, how do we get there? And the customer, just wants to kind of get that shortcut, that quick pick. It has to be digestible. So we've changed that. Now there's a new feature to explore our trails. You can kind of see it here. Each trail is kind of getting their own little highlight on the homepage. And then we highlight upcoming activities. So a lot of our activities are free. And we're trying to do a better job at not just having a calendar of events, but including the flyers to kind of incentivize and encourage and excite our customers. And so we're seeing this strategy benefit us. We're having more followers in the like every quarter we're growing from, in one quarter we went from 608 to 776 followers on Instagram. We saw about 1,000 more followers on Facebook. So that also communicates to us that we're a Facebook heavy community, and that's where we'll engage with more of our community, right? In kind of understanding what your region looks at. But again, we're starting to follow these these metrics. And so we're seeing 208% increase in profile visits or accounts reach. And so these are new things that we're tracking that we weren't tracking before. And I think that if, again, children in nature or getting people to spend more time outdoors, it's about these photos, it's about the activities, and we want now are strategically timing and trying to get information out there so that our posts reach more people in our region or visitors alike, right? Because it's a two-pronged approach. But with that, that's kind of what I had. I thought that maybe somewhat groups, children in nature might be interested in hearing about. But I'll hand it over to Jana for her part.
Thanks, Ava. Before I jump in, I just want to thank Ava and Rose for all the work that they're doing in the Rio Grande Valley. We are probably about 10 years behind. We've been working on this project for 6 years. And so I feel like the Caracara Trails are kind of like our big sister, and we look to them a lot and what they're doing. And I'm so glad that I've gotten to know them and know this project so well. So our project is called the Paso del Norte Trail. It's a 70-mile trail that not complete yet either, but it will eventually connect one side of our county to the other, be one connection. You can go ahead and advance it, Ava, thanks. Just really briefly, some demographics about El Paso. You can see it's very similar to Brownsville as far as population and having a large sister city across the border in Mexico. Also relatively young population with a higher rate of poverty. But one thing I wanted to also draw your attention to was if you look at the picture of El Paso here in the corner, we do have mountains. It's beautiful, but we're also a desert community. So the opposite of Brownsville as far as humidity, and we're very arid. But we also have very few trees. Our tree coverage is very low. And last year we had 55 days where the temperature was over 100 degrees. And so extreme heat is something, it's always been hot in the summer here, but extreme heat is something that we're thinking more about as we are getting more days over 100. And see, you can go ahead and go to the next. Thanks. When we came together 6 years ago to develop our vision for this trail, we wanted a connected trail from county line to county line, but we had people from all walks of life who were involved with us. There are stakeholders that we continue to meet with, and we're continuing to, they're helping us get funding to complete the sections of the trail. And those are the municipalities that the trail goes through, but we also engage the communities that will be near the trail. And we wanted to make sure everyone's interest was taken into account. So we wanted to make sure that the trail did promote that active transportation that Ava was talking about earlier, but also look at how we could incorporate the history and culture of our region, highlight the Rio Grande Valley, which is along part of the trail, and support economic development, ecotourism, and really at the end of the day, like Ava was talking about, we want to make healthy living and active living an easy choice for people and not make it a difficult or something where there's a lot of barriers. So these pictures really demonstrate why this trail matters so much in our community. You can see nature here looks a little bit different than the other parts of the country. As I mentioned, it is a desert, but there's beauty to the desert. There's lots of places that people can go out and enjoy being outside. They're just a little rough right now. That we do, like Brownsville, we actually do have a lot of irrigation canals and ditches that we can plan trails around. They're not usually made available to the public, so we're working to make those places more accessible and to put trails in those areas. But also you can see by this picture in the middle on the top, there are also neighborhoods in our community that, especially when we started this project 7 years ago, that did not have sidewalk infrastructure. Definitely a very low amount of ADA accessible infrastructure for folks to use. And so people couldn't go out and take a walk around the block even safely. And so we're really looking at ways we can expand networks that are safer and more comfortable for all users to use. So far, we have 20 miles of the 70 miles completed. But on this map, you can see there are some smaller sections that are turquoise, excuse me. And those are the sections that are currently have received funding and are in design. And so those sections should be up and running and constructed in the next 5 years. It's a very slow process. Excuse me. But what we're doing here at the foundation is we're continuing to engage our stakeholders, make sure that when grant opportunities come available, that they are applying to them so we can continue to expand the network. And we're continuing to make sure that the community is continually updated on what's going on, and so we can continue to get their buy-in. We also recently started a trail foundation, and that's just specific to the trail, and we're hoping to start some campaigns to raise money for more trail amenities and trees, which I'll talk about in a little bit. These two pictures are just quick snaps of our two completed trails. The Rio Grande River Park Trail was completed 20 years ago and really kind of spurred the idea of having a county line trail. It's along the river, very beautiful, and people talked for about 15 years about how we could expand it and make a larger network. And it took about that long for everyone to get on board, and we invested in the master plan to get that going. About the same time that we were working on the master plan, the Health Foundation built a 3.5-mile trail called the Playa Drain Trail, which is on the other side of the county. So not connected to the river park, but it's in an area of town that didn't, kind of like that picture I showed you a little while ago. Not a lot of sidewalk infrastructure, and this trail goes along one of those drainage ditches and is completely separate from traffic, so people can bike and walk very comfortably. And this was something that this community really has embraced, because it's kind of the first big facility that they've gotten in this part of town. And from that 3.5 miles, the city has been able to expand it to 8 miles. So we now have 8 miles of continuous trail in this part of the city. So like Ava said, you can build things, but you also need to make sure that people are engaged enough to where they show up and they come to and know how to use it. So in addition to engaging the public through our master plan process and our public meetings, we also schedule events, and we really try to reach out specifically to the neighborhoods that are connected to the trail, because it's really, those are the people that are really going to be using the trail. And so we make sure we have family-friendly events so people of all ages can go out and enjoy the trail. We also, like Ava mentioned, we're not as quite where Ava and her group is with the social media and our website, but we've also this past year started recognizing that a lot of the things that we've been putting out have mainly been for the partners that are helping us develop the trail, which is still one of our main focus, is to get the trail built. But we also need to spend some time making sure that there are user-friendly materials for people to use, so they do know things like, well, if I do want to use the trail and I'm not from the neighborhood, where can I park? And is there a restroom nearby? And all the things that you consider when you go to a different part of your city. Just a couple of events to highlight. We do try, when new sections of the trail come on board, we like to celebrate that. And so we have ribbon cuttings and little events to go with those. Probably our most popular event that we have had over the past couple of years are our trail Pause on the Trail event, where people bring out their pets. Anytime you bring a dog, I don't know, you invite people to bring their dogs, they're there. And you can see people of all ages come out, families, and they come out and are able to we kind of all walk together, but they start branching out, but they're able to experience the trail in their own way as well. And then we've also tried having some themed events where we set up stations along like a half-mile segment of the trail so that people can end up walking about a mile, but it may not feel that way because they're meeting people, they're stopping at stations to get information. Some of the ones highlighted here is The one on the right on top, we have Illuminatia's event on a section of the trail that's very well lit, and we did put Illuminatia's as well, had mariachi bands. People could get pictures with the Grinch, they could make an ornament. Some of the other events were more focused on health. People could stop at stations and get like stretch bands, a bottle of water. And it's just a way for people to experience the trail. And we hope, think, I'm here with my family. This is fun, but I could come out here without there being an event, and I will know I know I can use this trail. I know I can walk it. I know my child can walk with me, and so it's just they're really fun events that kind of hit a number of buckets for us as far as making sure people feel comfortable on the trail. Then another thing, at the beginning, we were really focused on pedestrians using the trail, but I will say that our cyclists in the city have really appreciated this trail because aren't there, our city has started to put more bike lanes in, but these trails, like, again, are much safer because they're completely away from traffic. And so, our cycling groups go out and they do group rides many times. And then we've also partnered with our city to make sure that we have e-bike stations at the trailheads, and we're trying to get more in so that people who don't have bikes can still use the trail. I talked earlier about tree coverage and extreme heat here in El Paso. And, I think one of the things we have started considering is, during those summer months, it's really hard to promote the trail because it's so hot during the day that we don't want people to go out and take chances when they shouldn't be. I will say that I think I mentioned before, it's always been hot here in El Paso in the summer. So in general, our population knows how to act when it's hot. But, we certainly don't want to encourage people to be out at noon on the trail. And so one of the things that we've really started to look at is how we can help mitigate some of that heat. And trees are a great way to do that. You can see the primary picture here on the slide on the left is our only tree-lined section of the trail, and that's a little bit more than a half a mile. The rest of our sections, we have more tree clusters. And so we're really looking at how we can secure funding to give a more tree-lined effect on more sections of the trail. So we've started applying for grant funding, and there's a lot of grant funding out there right now for trees. It's pretty awesome. So our foundation has been able to get some, the city has, and there's another nonprofit in town called Eco El Paso, and they've been great partners as well. And so, Ava, if you advance the slides one more time, I think what we try to do is engage the community in these tree plantings. We work with local high schools that are near the trail to get youth more involved in these activities and make them more aware of how important trees are to communities like ours. I will say that I don't know if you can really tell by these pictures. The trees are pretty big that we put in. And so what we've tried to do is we purchase the trees, and the community helps us put in half of them, and then the city will go in and put in the rest because they are pretty big. But it's been a really great way. I can't tell you how many people have been interested in volunteering to do this type of work. I think that people find planting a tree really rewarding, and they can go back on the trail and see that it's still there, and it's just a really good opportunity for volunteerism in a community. I think maybe one more slide. Oh, and so really, what we hope to do in the next 5 years is to secure the funding necessary to complete the trail. That means by the time, hopefully, then 5 to 10 years after that, the whole trail will be completed. We could probably have a webinar on how long it takes to build a trail, but it takes a really long time. But we're really hopeful. We have a lot of momentum here. And we, again, are going to keep looking at ways to amenitize the trail, get more trees on the trail, and really start working on that brand awareness and building the capacity of our foundation so we can continue to raise funds to make sure the trail is well maintained. And I think that concludes presentation.
Thank you so much, y'all. We've got a few questions in the chat. And if y'all want to start putting questions in the chat, I'll read them as we go along. Our first one is from Kathleen, and she asks, have you been tracking the traffic on the trails, and how have you been doing that?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that. We in the Rio Grande Valley, and it started with the city of Brownsville. When I was at the city of Brownsville, we had different bike ped trail counters. I remember we had like diamond traffic counts. We had other kinds of counts for, and different areas of the trails. And I think our engineering department would buy one as they built the trail. Maybe Parks department bought a different brand, because of our procurement policies. And so anyway, all that to say, once we got into eco counters does the automatic data to a portal. Ecovisio is the name of it. They have a platform where the data is automatically uploaded every 15 minutes, and that was very different from the other bike ped counters that we had been using. And those counters, we'd have to go manually collect the data, upload that data log, and then generate reports. And so now the Rio Grande Valley, through the lessons learned in the city of Brownsville, the Rio Grande Valley kind of has a single source policy, um, for procurement of using eco counters as our only brand now, so that it's consistent throughout the region. But we use eco counters. Brownsville has more than any other city in the Rio Grande Valley. I think all of them need to be updated with new loggers now that everything has moved to like 5G and they're like on old 3G ones. So the RGV MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, we've procured the batteries and loggers for the region, and we will be executing new MOUs before we distribute them to again restart counting data again. I think we've lost a little bit in these past couple months, where the batteries or the loggers are no longer reporting the data, but we do have a regional bicycle and pedestrian counter program, and we work with TTI and Texas Department of Transportation, who has a statewide bike ped count exchange program. So that's what we've been tracking. I don't have any slides related to that now, but feel free to contact me if you really want to get nerdy about the data counting, because I could definitely go there. Not sure about El Paso if y'all are doing counter data.
We do it more intermittently, and we have worked with TTI as well. I am gonna admit that we tried about 5 years ago, and the counters that we purchased, I think Ava already, they were a little wonky, and the heat really threw them off, and we got really weird counts. And so we mainly working with TTI has been our best bet, and we just do it intermittently just to like spot check and if we need information for grants or things like that. But basically what we get is also what we kind of expect to. And so it's like a validation that yeah, people are using it, but we also know that people are, if that makes sense, because we see it and people are telling us. And so we don't feel like we need to track it all the time right now.
And I will just add to that, Jana, I think you're right. You don't need to track it all the time to kind of verify things, but TTI has a bicycle and pedestrian counter loan program. So I recommend you kind of, again, you can contact me, but if you're interested in doing trail counts at 2 week intervals or whatever, shout out to Robert Benz and the Sean and the TTI group, because they will help you a lot.
Thanks so much. Our next question is from Rachel, and she asked back to your both talked about marketing a bit. Do you survey participants to ask how they know about your events, and how is that affecting your marketing?
Yes, we do. We usually, I'm sorry, I had to think back. It's like, when was the last time we did that? But we try to do that at most of our events. And what we find is people are mainly finding out about us on Facebook. But we also, because of particularly the neighborhood that the Playa Drain Trail is in, we also do a lot of like old fashioned put notices up at recreation centers and things like that, because there is an older population in that part of town. And so people are learning about it that way too, and word of mouth.
And I'll just say for us at the MPO, I don't think we use that data. Like we don't ask how they found out about our events, but the MPO is not usually leading the event. We partner with the School of Public Health. They have a Tu Salud Si Cuenta program, Your Health Matters. And so luckily through our health partners, they survey participants at, for example, an open streets event. And that is how they survey participants. I would love personally to do trails surveys specifically on trails instead of at events. But it takes an effort, it takes a village. And if you're doing data collection or analytics right, then, I think that there's a lot you could learn about framing questions and framing certain things. But yeah, all that to say, we do survey participants, um, and a lot of it tends to be social media in our region. I know that we see that a lot. They found out on Facebook or through a group. But yeah, hope that answers the question.
Thanks. Jim asks, do you allow e-bikes on the trails?
We do. In fact, the e-bike station that I showed you the picture of, they've just at our e-bike company here in town has just started adding e-bikes to their inventory. So I don't think a lot of people are using e-bikes right now on the trail, but we have the more cycling groups that are still on cycles. But we we do allow them, and I think we talked about whether I remember talking about whether or not they should be allowed at some point, but I don't think we've ever talked about a policy to not allow them. So they are allowed right now.
Yeah, similarly, I know the city, with this one, I will speak specific to the city of Brownsville. We opened up the West Rail Trail not too long, and it's such a great straight type of trail because it's on an abandoned railroad. And so we see a lot of e-bike use, and similar to Jana, if you don't have the policy, if you don't have the limiting it or restricting it, it's definitely allowed. What I've noticed in the city of Brownsville is that there's sort of like a self-enforcement when it's like high demand, or like when everyone's out on the trail in the evening, you're gonna get calls of people reporting the e-bikes that are going too fast. Those calls come in, and the city of Brownsville has a bike police force, a bike group, and so I know that it seems to be self-enforced among the community, especially in the high demand. Now, if they can get away with it when there's limited use on the trail and they're passing a few people who maybe don't mind, but when the crowds are there, the complaints are there. And so that's what we're seeing is in right now on e-bikes.
Just to follow up there, do y'all have any like posted speed limit signs um for those trails? Like you were saying there, Ava?
We have stop signs at every intersection. I mean, maybe I haven't paid attention the whole way, but I haven't seen any posted posted speed signs. It's really self-enforced in terms of public safety. And most people that get reprimanded, they won't get a ticket, but they will be warned, and usually that kind of thing happens. But it's the intersections, it's the stop sign at every intersections that we have on our trails. And so, of course, it's a straight path, but when you're seeing that risk, then yeah, we'll get more complaints.
Great. Then our next question is from Kathleen. Have there been consideration of native species that are drought tolerant when you're working on your landscaping?
Yes, we primarily plant mesquite and palo verde trees because they do well in our climate. We've experimented with some fruit trees as well, and those do pretty well too. But we are as the more that trees that we're trying to procure, we're really looking at trying to find the trees that do the best. So we're not having to go out and replace dead trees. And so we are starting to look more and more at those drought tolerant trees.
I know along the West Rail Trail, there have been some because it was a newer trail, there were some tree plantings, and I heard some of those trees got taken. But in terms of native plants, yeah, it's unfortunate. But in terms of the native piece, there we don't have landscaping guidelines yet, but the regional group, the RGVMPO where I work, we recently did a resiliency and sustainability plan, and some of the recommendations out of that plan were for native planting, native species. And so as part of that, we're now developing regional bicycle trail, I guess regional trail standards which are now it's focusing more on safety instead of like the trail design itself. It's more like safety, so we want curb cutouts, and maybe those curb cutouts have some stormwater retention or stormwater management drainage. But then along the trail itself, what we're talking about is if you're not doing native planting, then we're keeping like mow zones on like 2 or 3 feet on each side of the trail, but everything past that buffer of that's mowed, the rest of it is a no mow zone. And so by having no mow zones, it's not necessarily native planting, but it's allowing the natural growth, the natural habitat for whatever species that we have around there. But yeah, the drought tolerant piece, I'm sure in the desert a little bit more since we kind of have just more low-lying areas and more flooding areas than we see a lot of super drought. I mean, it's not to say it's not hot and we're not in a drought because I know our reservoirs definitely are low. But yeah, we're trying to figure out the maintenance piece, and so maybe some no-mow zones in other areas would work out.
Great. This next question is similar. From Rachel, how are you learning the native plant options to express the natural beauty of the area and honor local culture?
I mean, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, so we work with some consultants that are landscape architects or know landscape architects. Our city also has a list of trees that that their arborists recommend and prefer that go into parks and trails. Um, so it's mainly going off of list and just knowing, I mean, and listening to the local experts about the trees that are more native or drought tolerant. Sometimes I think the first trail the trail that we put in, originally we put in a wide variety of trees, and I think the vision of that was beautiful, but we did see some of those trees fail because they weren't really compatible to the region. So we are again trying to pay more attention to those experts and listening to what they recommend what we plant.
Yeah, I think for us, we have like a master naturalist group and a Brownsville beautification committee. And so the city of Brownsville also recently hired a new city forester. And so I don't know, since I'm working more regionally now, how they're coming to decisions in the city of Brownsville, but I know that we lean again, similar to Jenna, a lot of the resources on what's native to our area. Particularly, I don't know if this is the case up there, but we have a Montezuma cypress tree that is an endangered species, just because I think historically it was the most water resistant and like largest tree along the Rio Grande, and so it built the first bridges and the forts and all kinds of infrastructure, railroads. And so I know that's a heavy water use tree. It's a cypress, so it's selective where we can plant that. But yeah, that we kind of just look into the history, look into, lean on our partners. But yeah, there's a lot that you can do when you engage with the right partnership. Um, yeah, sorry. I tend to ramble.
The next question is from Janet. Do you have an app for the trail or do you use QR codes along the trail for users to access information?
We use QR codes. I don't like straightforward. We use QR codes. We don't think we have the an app at all, just the website, which that's how you get the info.
We want to start using QR codes, but we haven't yet. So that's on our as we start looking at we need more wayfinding on new sections of the trail, and we're going to start incorporating that into the new signage as we move along.
Yeah, we made some signs accidentally and didn't have any QR codes or anything. So then we printed some stickers and went back out. And the stickers, QR code are a great way to go for anyone interested in that. Yeah.
Next from Nick, are there any efforts to incorporate local commerce in the urban trail areas, such as monthly Saturday market, nearby food trucks, or something along those lines?
That is also on our next phase things to start working on. I think when I talked about the vision, one of the things that we know that trails can do is they can promote tourism and enhance the neighborhood economy. And so we are looking at ways we can make destinations more accessible to the trail, and thinking of ways we can work with the city and the county to make that possible, because part of, if you want to use the trail for active transportation, there has to be somewhere to go. And so we are starting to look at that. I know like things like food trucks and things like that, we've thought about it. It's hard to get food trucks out to the trail because if you go out there and no one's on the trail or there's just a few people, I think that food trucks may not think it's kind of worth their time. But during events and things like that, we're thinking about incorporating those types of businesses as well.
In Brownsville, the city of Brownsville started a farmers market through a Brownsville Wellness Co. So again, Commissioner Rosegown, shout out to her. I was like, I'm not taking her off the slides because really she's done a lot of work with the School of Public Health, and shout out to Dr. Belinda Reininger. She's the dean of the Brownsville campus of the School of Public Health. And a long time ago, way before I started getting involved, they had decided to do a monthly farmers market, and the city of Brownsville's Parks Department really supported that on a regular basis. Turned into a nonprofit Brownsville Wellness Coalition. They now do community gardens, and we have a lot of programming on our trails due to this partnership. But every Saturday morning from 9 a.m. to 12, the Brownsville Farmers Market goes on. And again, for the most part, it's been a pop-up with Parks Department, shout out to them, supporting all of these vendors, farmers from the region. And it's grown such a momentum the last 10 years, it's been more than 10, I think they might have hit their 20-year anniversary. But they now are going to build a permanent building. And so the Texas Food Bank, I think, has helped them, and an EDC grant has helped them. But we're going to open the cannery public market off the trail pretty soon here. I think this year in 2025. It's under construction. The other event that we have programmed along the trail is a Lunada. I think they might do like four a year, so it might be like quarterly. But the Lunadas are Saturday evenings. We have we have a little amphitheater area on one end of the trail, and they play a movie, and they have lots of vendors. That's more arts and crafts and other kinds, not like farmer produce. But anyway, all that to say, it takes a village, and you really have to have your policies and procedures in place, and you have to have fair treatment of vendors, and registration links and people to answer the phone and help navigate that. And so again, I'm grateful for my village, but no blame to areas that aren't doing it, because it ends up being the same people over and over and over again. And that's really hard if you don't have people standing up for each other in your area. So anyway, I do this a lot.
Thanks. We've got, I think, just a couple more questions here. One from Rachel. Have you implemented any programs such that they have at Big Bend National Park to train volunteers to mitigate heat risk by talking to people on trails and explaining the need for hydration, heat risk, etc.? This has significantly decreased heat-related deaths at Big Bend and other semi-arid and arid sites.
We have not, but I think that's a great idea, and I'm gonna take that back to our our folks and see if there's a way we could do something like that.
Yeah, we're not as dry and arid. I know that we a lot of the promotional materials in terms of like the branding and marketing will be water related or the sweatbands or the shade or the blue, like even the little fans. And so I think we do it from a different, not from a training and like we're trained to facilitate that either, but they definitely do it in terms of what their giveaways are is to help reduce heat risk.
Great. Next up from Janet, she asks about if you have Wi-Fi access on the trail.
We do. We don't have any extra built in, but that's something that we've talked about is laying some lines under the trail. But right now, all of our built sections are accessible. You can access Wi-Fi on the phone because of where they are and how close they are, because it's an urban trail.
We want to do high speed broadband fiber network along our trails. But I got to be honest, I haven't kept up with whether or not that has gone in. In terms of Wi-Fi, I know we have areas where we have our park facilities, and so maybe like this one gym may have a Wi-Fi network, and then where the farmers market is has some Wi-Fi, but it's scattered. It's not throughout the whole trail.
Next up from Mariana, we have you partnered with, and I think this is for you, Jana, have you partnered with New Mexico in regards to connectedness of the trail, or is this already connected? Would also love to see some community events like those in Brownsville to advocate for paddling along the Rio Grande. And have you considered for those times when water is flowing?
So yes, we have talked to New Mexico. We know that they're planning a statewide trail and we do hope to eventually connect their trail to ours. And in fact, the Health Foundation is currently funding a trail in Las Cruces, New Mexico, a small portion of one of their trail sections. But it's not one that connects directly to ours, but we definitely know people there and are in conversations with them about how to make those connections work. And I don't, we have not considered paddling along the Rio Grande. I think some people have talked about it, but that's not something that we have actively started talking about. We would probably also need to talk to IBWC about that too. I'm not quite sure how that would work, but it's a good idea.
I'll just add that, yeah, we stick to the Laguna versus the Rio Grande just because of the political, the constraints and the legalities. And so we haven't really started promoting that, but I'm with you in that I wish we could advocate more and kind of get some access to those areas.
Well, thank you so much, everyone who put questions in the chat. We had some really great questions, and thank you so much to both of our presenters for your time today. I did put in the chat our evaluation, so if y'all wouldn't mind filling out the evaluation, we share that with the presenters so they kind of know how the presentation went, and all of us in here that are in education know how important evaluation is. And so if y'all could fill that out, that'd be fantastic. Our next webinar is on February 5th. It's with Texan by Nature, and it is about data, which again, we all love some data. And so I'll put the link for that in the chat as well. Oh, Ava just shared her email address, so if any of you are looking to contact her, and then lastly, just so y'all know, our webinars are brought to you through donations from folks like y'all. So if you all have the ability to donate to help Texas Children in Nature Network, we would greatly appreciate that. But thank you so much to our presenters today. And I hope all of you have a fantastic rest of your day and are able to stay warm through our little Texas cold snap.
Thank you all. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.